Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&As, and as we've been doing for a few weeks now, we're going to do this in two parts, and I think I've got enough stuff for a separate Gear Talk Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. I'm 16, almost 17 years old. I'm still a novice lifter, been lifting casually for over a year, and I'm now running a proper program. I have had gynecomastia since the age of about 14. At that time, it was so noticeable that I felt embarrassed to take my shirt off on the beach. It shrank over time but never fully went away. I was wondering if my gynecomastia will ever fully go away naturally, or if I have to get it surgically removed. Does a combination of weightlifting and cardio have the potential to reduce or even eliminate gyno? I don't do much cardio other than daily activities and gym class once a week. I weight train 3 times a week. Furthermore, I was wondering if stress reduction could help. I've had a lot of stress in the last year or so. Is it true that meat, dairy, eggs, and processed foods are contributing to this problem due to high estrogen content? Will eliminating or limiting intake of these help? All right, brother, great question. And actually, your problem isn't as uncommon as you might think it is. There's actually data out there I've seen showing that in America, in the United States, 25% of teenage males actually develop gynecomastia in a greater or lesser extent. So it does happen. Fortunately, for about half of them, as long as they don't stay overweight going into adulthood, it tends to go away on its own for about half. The other half have to use various methods to try to get rid of it. Now, what I do want to discuss is the meat and egg thing. No, that's not true. That's again vegan propaganda, and again they're going to come in and they'll see this, and maybe Vegan Gains will make a video about this or jump in and chime in and try to show me a study that showed 3 young men who ate eggs developed gynecomastia. So clearly that's the cause. So the joking aside about that. That's not your cause. However, there are other potential issues with it. It is believed strongly that environmental toxins and xenoestrogens might be contributing, but the problem is that you might live in a city or whatever with these things around and you can't get away from them. That's just the nature of it. Nothing you can do there. Also, becoming obese during your teens can be a large contributing factor, because you have to remember there's a hormonal component to body fat, and the more body fat you have on a male, the more aromatase activity you tend to have. Not always, but as a general rule. So that can be a factor as well. So staying only a little bit leaner can help. And by leaner, guys, I don't mean shredded. People need to quit confusing these health ideas about being leaner, being in the healthy range, 12 to 20% versus being ripped. So in fact, the thing to keep in mind is that being ripped might actually contribute to developing gyno later, but that's a whole other topic due to hormone imbalances. So for you, the environmental toxins could be an issue. It's not meat and things. Now, being healthy, being fit, being active, eating a good diet, doing the cardio and lifting you're doing can help remove the fat around there, because you tend to develop fat sometimes around that glandular tissue, but the glandular tissue itself, that hard stuff, that when you touch it, it's not squishy. It's like a little marble under there. That is the actual real gynecomastia. You actually have enlarged mammary glands, and that's what that is. It's hypertrophy of the mammary glands. Now, there's only really 2 ways to remove that. The first one, I'm going to say, as a teenager, you need to avoid, and that's using certain AI drugs and SERMs to help reduce the size of it. As a teenager, I'm going to strongly recommend that you not do that, because you are messing with your endocrine system. There could be long-term consequences to that. In addition to the fact that could potentially risk, some of the SERMs might, in some cases, seal your epiphyseal plates off and stop you from growing any taller. So the other option is going to be surgery. If you need to talk to your parents about it, see what sort of medical insurance you have. I don't know what country you live in, but if you do some research on it, there are certain key phrases that you use with a doctor or a psychiatrist that will oftentimes require medical insurance to cover gynecomastia removal surgery, because it's considered to be a cosmetic procedure unless it interferes with your life. And if it causes extreme mental stress or inability to function in certain ways, or it is extremely painful, insurance in some cases has to cover the removal surgery. So you've got options there. Look into it. All right, next question. I really messed up my wrist about 6 weeks ago. Recently back to lifting and lost a good amount of strength and muscle. However, the trust with my wrist just isn't there, even though there is no pain, full mobility, etc. What is the best possible way to build the trust back up with the wrist? Is it just something that comes with time? All right, brother, great question. We all experience little minor injuries like that. I mean, if you have an injury like that lasts about 6 weeks, that's more than a minor injury. That's pretty major. But it sounds like so far you've rehabbed it pretty well. If you have full mobility of the wrist back, and that's the main thing. Usually a lot of wrist injuries are a result of poor mobility. If it's mobile, if you can move it right, you can stretch it and everything without pain, you're probably doing pretty good. What you need to consider there is that make sure that you understand how you injured it the first time. Step back and carefully look at your training programming and go, okay, was it me having lack of wrist mobility while maybe doing push presses? That's a really common one. Sometimes we let our wrist mobility slip. Things like a heavy push press might injure it. Was it doing max bench pressing without maybe wrist wraps or something? That could be a factor for some people. Or was it simply an issue of excessive overuse, meaning you overreached chronically too much and then things started hurting and you kept pushing until something actually gave? It could be a programming issue. What you need to assess is what did you do with your training specifically that caused that injury, and make sure that you address that in the future going forward. And I think that's the best thing you can do, both physically to help prevent it again and to develop confidence in that spot. And you know what, as someone who has torn a bicep before myself, it took me a long time to get confidence in that bicep again, to not tear again. And actually I went through a long period of having to rehab some inflammation in the connective tissue from it too. I really had some issues with that, and I had to adjust my training around it. And now it seems to be fine, but I used to have certain exercises I couldn't do. Like I couldn't squat, for example, with my hands way out wide. I had to keep a narrow grip on the squat bar, which meant certain types of low bar squatting was kind of out. So I ended up developing all my strength on the high bar squat and ended up squatting over 500 pounds high bar as a result of that. But yeah, so limitations sometimes in connective tissue, it can make it hard to regain confidence. But in your case, it sounds like everything's good. And as long as you know, you can figure out what caused it in your training and continue to do things right and keep it mobile, keep it healthy, pay attention to it, that confidence will restore itself over time and you're going to be okay there. But again, it's important that you not repeat the same mistakes that hurt you the first time. Because that's really the main thing there, because your confidence is one thing, but injuring yourself again is a totally different thing. And it's important that you don't do so. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I've seen people who are overweight in the gym doing ab exercises with the size of their stomach prevents them from training abs effectively. Are they still getting something out of doing this, or should they focus on losing the weight first? Thanks. Actually, a lot of people do tons of ab work in the gym outside of having a coach because they're convinced that they can burn the fat around their waistline by doing that, which most of us know is not really true. Doing large amounts of conditioning work is the best thing that can help with what they're actually trying to do with a radiant effect. But that's a whole nother topic. As far as them doing it, they're still getting the benefits of it. You have to remember, a fat person, you're thinking, oh, they're not getting a full range of motion. Well, the core itself, just to train your abdominals, doesn't always require a long range of motion. When you're going beyond just about 6 to 8 inches of movement, you're actually training other muscles in addition to your abs, things like hip flexors and everything else, which is important for a lot of exercises. That's one reason you guys see me advocating long range of motion standing crunches, because you're training your abs to work at the same time as the hip flexors, which carries over tremendously to things like the squat and the deadlift. It's because it is multi-muscle in nature. But training their core is still giving them a stronger core, and I would say, yeah, they need to be focusing on losing weight, but they need to understand that that core work is not going to help them lose any body fat whatsoever. But the thing that you have to consider, they're obese and out of shape. Having a strong core and developing a strong core will make them stronger and more effective at doing a lot of the big free weight exercises. And those big free weight exercises are going to be tremendously useful in recompositioning themselves. So they should definitely be doing the core work. And just remember, just because it's a partial movement doesn't mean it's not effective for the abs. Again, the abs have a pretty small range of motion. But again, ultimately remember that it's just training yourself to have a stronger core so that you can get better at the big lifts, which are going to help them lose weight faster. But it just doesn't help with spot reduction. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I compete in powerlifting and I'm obviously strongest on the wide grip bench press, middle fingers on the rings, but I was thinking of doing wide grip competition bench only once a week and narrow grip for the rest of the week so it's easier on my shoulders. I don't have any shoulder issues with wide grip at all, but just a precaution. So I was thinking Monday competition bench, Wednesday close grip bench, Friday middle grip bench, pinkies close to the rings. Or would it be better if I did competition at least twice a week so I have better neural efficiency? What do you think? I think that you really have to assess what your goals are and how far you want to go in powerlifting. And what I mean is there are guys like KK who still do close grip even in competition because his bench isn't his strong point, and he's still been a world champion, but he knows that he's not the best bencher in the world. He's not concerned with being the best bencher in the world or setting a bench record, so he accepts that he's going to bench 10 to 15 pounds less, that he might only bench 500 pounds instead of 520 in competition by doing, bringing that grip in 4 inches on each side, but it keeps his shoulders healthy. So you've got to decide, is your bench, are you trying to set some state record on the bench? Are you trying to set some national record? Is your total so close to some guy that you're chasing who you want to beat at a major meet that you need that extra 5 pounds or 10 pounds to beat him? That's what you have to decide as far as even using the wide grip. And that's my advice on that usually. Now, if you do realize that you do need to use the wide grip, I think limiting your usage of it to once a week is probably a smart thing with what you're doing. You can build your general strength and your general power and size exclusively off the close grip, and you only need to do enough wide grip to maintain the neural efficiency of that specific movement pattern. And that once a week is totally acceptable for that. And that way you can put less stress on your shoulders for your general buildup on the other days. But the other option that you have available there is to just train the close grip all the way up till close to meet time and then bring your grip out when you get to your peaking for the meet. That's another option as well that you could consider. So you've got different options there. And unless you're one of those guys who does multiple meets a year, in which case I understand why you're wanting to train the wide year round. If you do a meet, say, every 12 weeks or every 16 weeks, I totally get that. I understand that. But you also need to understand that doing 3 or more meets a year does tend to lead to a much, much higher injury rate in my experience dealing with people. What I've usually seen is I've watched guys who get that injury, and it's usually when they do that third meet in the same year when they're competing at a high level. I've had multiple friends, people I know I watched in the UK who had injuries, guys who I competed with, like in my weight class, one of the guys that I beat at nationals and one of the guy who took first place, they both tore their bicep within 4 or 5 months of that competition because they did too many meets back to back to back. So just a factor for you to consider there if that's why you're doing it. All right, next question. I've used your ICF novice routine for a while and love it, but would you ever consider posting a routine for intermediate level lifters? I know I'd be excited for such a thing. Well, brother, you're in luck. I have 2 intermediate routines up. I have one for off-season athletes. If you go check my playlist to the side on this channel, in my playlist, I have a free training program playlist. I have an intermediate off-season routine for athletes. And then I also have a routine, the most recent routine I put out, I forget the exact name of it now, because I did it in a longer chat for people who are more casual. I wrote a totally acceptable intermediate routine for people to follow who are non-athletes. So I have one for each group of people. And the non-athlete one has the most flexibility in it because it's not running block periodization and it gives you a lot of options. It's a very free-form style one to kind of match your lifestyle, whereas in the athlete one is a very rigid, very structured program, with the only real adaptation you have available in it being the choice of accessory movements. So I've already got you covered. All right, next question. You say uninterrupted sleep, but what if we wake up pretty much every single night to go pee? Is there anything we can do about that, or do we just deal with it? And yes, I go pee right before bed, and I don't even drink as much water during the latter part of the day, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. I still wake up almost every night to go pee. All right, what I mean by uninterrupted sleep, meaning no disruption of your REM cycles. Usually when you wake up to pee in the middle of the night, you're between REM cycles, and as long as you go pee and you get back to bed and you reclose your eyes and you doze back out within 1 to 2 minutes, it doesn't interrupt your REM cycles. That's perfectly normal. What you need to avoid doing, you need to make sure if you're one of those people who go up to pee in the night that you do not have a television or a computer screen on between you or your bathroom, so that you don't see any blue electronic light, because the blue electronic light will disrupt your melatonin production. And if you don't take melatonin, that's a problem. Same thing with your cell phone. If you have, your smartphone, if you turn the screen on and you read several text messages while you pee or after you pee before you fall back to sleep, that will disrupt your REM cycle slightly. So you need to avoid electronic screens completely and make sure that you stay in a pretty dark room. No fluorescent lighting between you and there. Hopefully just a normal light in the bathroom. Keep everything as dark as possible. Pee and go back to sleep, and that still counts as far as REM cycles go as uninterrupted sleep. Just don't expose yourself to lights that will affect melatonin production, and you should be good. And again, as long as you're back to sleep within 2 minutes from the time you wake up, pee, and get back to bed, that counts as uninterrupted, so you don't need to worry about it. So again, uninterrupted, I guess what I mean is not that you don't wake up at all, it's that you don't disrupt your actual REM cycles, which is a concern, because that's what affects all of your hormone production, that's what affects a lot of your recovery, that's what affects most of your nervous system recovery from your training is going to be those REM cycles, not so much just the rest. Your actual muscle recovery you will get even by just dozing in and out of sleep. Even if your REM cycles get disrupted, the actual direct muscle recovery is usually fine, barring the hormone production and like the growth hormone production while you sleep. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.